You saw her first on Arie's season of The Bachelor, and then you saw her on Bachelor in Paradise, and now you can hear her on her own podcast, A Little Help for Our Friends. Good friend of the show. She's been on this podcast. I mean, I think we're approaching 10 times, but I could be, maybe it's like 7 or 8, but it's a lot. It's Jacqueline Trumbull. Jacqueline, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I wanted to first start off by saying this. You recently got a new haircut, and I wouldn't normally care about people's haircuts. I mean, it's obviously noticeable because you've always had long hair. It's one of the first things I think a lot of people noticed about you on Arie's season. They would always talk about, I remember people saying that they really loved your hair.
Yeah.
And then you cut it really short, obviously. And when I texted you about it, I said, I liked it. I said, have you ever had it this short? And you said, I've basically had the same haircut since, did you say 8th grade or high school?
8th grade.
8th grade. You've always had long hair, and you just decided, 20 years later, decided, hey, I just want to I want to go short.
I guess I had long hair even before that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what went behind it? Was your hair getting in the way? You just was like, I'm sick of having long hair.
No. Sarah Heron posted on her story a question about like, should she get a French cut, a French bob? And I was like, wow, that's a cute haircut. And I also love everything French. And I thought, sorry, the dog is playing with an annoying toy. 1 second. Okay. So I thought I probably had the face for it with the like Bambi eyes and everything. And so I sent it to my hairstylist and he said, yeah, let's do it. So I cut it. It's not really meant to be a permanent change. I just wanted to have short hair like once while I'm still young and pretty.
And then you're just going to let it grow out again?
Yeah.
Or are you going to keep it short? Okay.
I might keep the bangs. They're overgrown right now, but yeah, I might keep the bangs.
All right. Let's jump into this season of The Bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
We're only 3 episodes in. So I want to ask you just right off the bat. The choice of Grant was always suspicious in the first place because it's not like he had a major presence on Jen's season. He finished 5th, so he was outside the top 4. We didn't get to meet his family.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get to have that connection that you usually build with somebody who eventually ends up becoming the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wasn't involved in any major storylines. And yet the way they rolled him out, like he wasn't announced on GMA. He wasn't announced on an After the Final Rose. He wasn't announced on a tell-all. Like it was just very poorly done. Didn't seem like there was a lot of promotion to his season. And you don't know this, but it's out there that this season is 2 episodes shorter than a normal Bachelor season. He's also getting gypped on the number of episodes that he's having. So, I mean, if last night, if you look at last night's episode, as we record this on Tuesday, he's down to 10 women. And then next week they go to Madrid and he goes from 10 to 7. And then the following week they go to Scotland and he goes 7 to 4. So they're only 5 episodes before hometowns. Wow. Usually there's 7. So I think a lot has to do with the scheduling now with ABC, and they have other programming in January. Usually it started the first Monday in January. Now they have to push it back because of college football. So I think that has something to do with it. Either way, Grant has the shortest Bachelor season we've ever seen since, I think, Sean Lowe. But Grant in general, through 3 episodes, take away everything that you may have thought about him coming off Jen's season. How have you seen him as the Bachelor through 3 episodes? What do you think of him?
I think he's done okay. I mean, I do like his focus on emotional vulnerability, and he seems to be following through on that, opening up himself. And he's cried, I think, in front of people, right? I mean, that's kind of nice to see. He seems to be pretty invested in the role. I can't tell if he should be stirring as much shit as he is, like being very encouraging of women like tattling on each other. I don't know if that would be my move. But he's in a difficult position there. So I don't know. I mean, mostly this season is a little bit, it just feels like every other season. I'm not super nothing's really standing out to me yet.
No, it is pretty much. And I could probably say this for every season as well. They're all kind of the same. It's the same thing. It's just different cast outside of one person. But for me, I find Grant to be engaging. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not bored by him.
No,
I think he's engaging. People like get mad at him because Looks like he's promoting a singing career. Like, look, I don't give a shit about that. Because
Okay,
he did
but
a rap.
that was
Care.
impressive when he made that song up. Like, I didn't get it until the end that he had just made that up on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
It's
was
like,
impressive.
and also, who cares? What's the big deal? I don't think he's going into a music career. I think he likes music, and I think he
Mhm.
likes maybe singing music and maybe writing music. I don't think he's going to be an R&B artist anytime soon, but I guess time will tell on that.
Well, he has more power to him, but you can have two goals at the same time.
Yeah. I don't understand the people that are giving him shit for
Mhm.
singing a couple times. The R&B date, the one-on-one with Alex last week at the piano. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
So last night, we're talking about the first group date, and this is always weird to me. I notice this because I cover the show every year, and I've been covering it for 47 of the 49 seasons. You probably didn't recognize this, but I just want to point something out. So Jesse at the beginning of the episode says, hey, we're going to have 2 one-on-ones and a group date. And normally when you have 2 one-on-ones and a group date, whether it's in LA still or even when travel starts, the first date is always the one-on-one, because then while the people are out on the one-on-one is when they deliver the group date card, because the group date will go second. And then by process of elimination, you realize who's the second girl that gets the one-on-one. And for whatever reason, they were just like, yeah, we're just going to give you the group date up front. And by the way, so you're going to know right away who gets the 2 one-on-ones. They've never done that before that I can remember.
I did kind of notice that. I don't know if I would have said, I wouldn't have known that never happens, but I did kind of perk up at that.
I can't remember any time an episode had 2 one-on-ones in a group where they did the group first, because that kind of takes the suspense out of, that's the whole point of delivering that group date rose second, is who's the girl that's not on this date card, so we know is getting the second one-on-one. But small thing. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So the first group date, finance stuff, I don't even really care what happened during the date with Grant Bucks and all this stupid shit.
Except that $20,000 is a lot to spend on an engagement ring. Like, it's an unnecessary amount. And that's what they were all saying.
Yeah. And then put yourself in those women's shoes at this point. Yeah. Would you have played along and actually answered the question of how much you wanted to be spent on your engagement ring? Or would you have done what Bailey did, which was, my answers were more for Hannah Berner, the comedian. I was looking to get her attention rather than actually answer these honestly. What would you have done?
It depends on my
You would have done the money. You would have said how much you wanted.
I wouldn't have said 20,000. That's high. That's unnecessarily high.
No.
I think it would have depended on my mood. Sometimes I am in a comedic mood, and I could have seen myself going that direction. But I don't know that I literally would have put down a number.
It seemed like half of them did, and then half of them said, like, I don't care as long as the person cares about me, or whatever. Whatever
I definitely wouldn't have said that, because that's a lie.
So and it really, whatever happened on that date is irrelevant. It was silly. It was just a means to an end to get to the after party, which is where drama always happens, especially when you're still in LA, because these women are still getting to know each other. They've literally been there less than a week at this point. So the big thing to come out of that group date after party was Zoey. And this could be, like, I think I had more of an issue with Zoey last week, because I'm just tired of the whole, can I interrupt you, since we know that's producer driven.
Yeah.
I don't really think, there's 2 things about Zoey. One, she did kind of make it about herself when everybody's like, that was fun today. And she's like, I was so uncomfortable. And then she starts crying. I didn't understand the emotion over a date like that. It wasn't very hard hitting at all. And I don't know why she got emotional. But the thing that I do understand her getting upset over is why Serafina just throws out, that's the shortest dress I've ever seen in my life. First off, I didn't even notice the dress was that short. And I'm guessing that wasn't the shortest dress you've ever seen in your entire life. What did you make of all that at the the after party with Zoey and the other women?
Okay. Well, first of all, you're upset on that show all the time for various reasons that are mysterious to even you. So who knows why she was upset? It's very hard to hold in your feelings. I mean, I did a pretty good job of remaining stoic, and that doesn't get you airtime. So her her dissolving into tears didn't strike me as like that strange. It's just we're just missing background information, like what happened. You know, obviously there were like ITMs where I'm sure she was explaining it, and then they let it come out of nowhere in the edit. The shortest dress I've ever seen comment. I mean,
did you notice her dress at all before Serafina made that comment?
no, I don't know that I noticed it after either, though. I missed Serafina saying I had people texting me in crisis yesterday while I was watching this, so I was like, I'm trying really hard to pay attention. But I don't know. I mean, I can see being upset over that. I can also see brushing it off and just being like, whatever, dude. Like, men like legs, so maybe make your skirt shorter. But it is tough. I mean, it's tough to go into an environment of like a bunch of hot women. It feels like you've been like placed in the popular clique at high school again. It's intimidating, and you're competing with each other, and you don't really know how you stack up yet. And so, I mean, I could see that being hurtful. It felt like it got really overblown. I mean, where this was like something that was brought to Grant's attention, and then like this was the date where everyone was like crying the next day, right?
Yeah, which was random. Like,
yeah.
Because they gave no context. They were just like, oh, it was so tough last night. It's like, okay, maybe you would have cried that out after you got home, and maybe you cried yourself to sleep that night. What you were doing near the pool, just kind of lounging around with the other girls and still crying. Again, I think context was probably left out of that. I just didn't seem to fit. Why?
Yeah. I mean, I
don't know if I've ever seen that before.
If Serafina was crying, that would make some sense to me, because she's like, did she say that comment directly to what's her face?
To Zoey? No, she said it to the other girls on the couch while Zoey was like at the bar in the distance. But okay. Zoey heard.
Well, that sucks that Zoey heard, because that is a comment that women are kind of likely to say to each other.
Well, if you go back to last week with Zoey, we've been through this 100 times. It happens every season on the show. At some point during either the first night cocktail party or a group date after party, there's always somebody that's stepping in and saying, "Can I steal you for a sec?" And the way Zoey went about it with Allie Joe, and then Allie Joe saying, you know, this is ridiculous. You've had him. This is now the third time. I don't want to answer for Zoey because I have no idea. Maybe Zoey's really never watched this show before or doesn't understand how it works. But you kind of, even if you didn't, wouldn't you kind of know if a producer is saying, like, go in there and interrupt her, that immediately people are going to start side-eyeing you. The other women are going to start side-eyeing you in the house, right?
I'm trying to think of a case where you wouldn't pick up on that immediately. Yeah. I mean, I was basically a Bachelor historian by the time I went on, so I knew the tricks.
Yeah.
You really trust your producers. So if they suggest something to you, like, I can see why you would do it, but she was like literally just sitting on the couch near them. I could see how somebody would come and interrupt early if a producer, because the producers line you up, right? They basically say your turn next, your turn next, your turn next. So if your turn comes, you don't know how long the person before you has been talking to the lead. So that's why a lot of quick introduction or like interruptions will happen. People will be like, I only got 2 minutes. It's like, well, the person who was interrupting didn't know that you only got 2 minutes. They were just told that it was their turn. But this bitch was like sitting on the couch, you know, like watching them. So she knew exactly how much time they had. So that was a pretty dumb move.
And you just wonder, oh, by the way, she's a fellow Dookie too. Did you know that Zoey went to Duke?
I did not. Go Blue Devils.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a Duke person.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in tech, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then she moved to New York after Duke. Kind of like you.
Oh, word.
But yeah, she didn't do herself any favors. The second you do that, and then when she's sitting around with the other women, kind of acting like, I made this comment last week because it was just like, she was using the date card as the reason she did it. Hey, the date card told us to shoot our shot. I'm like, really? The date card of all things that's why you did it? And she's like, hey, day guard told me to shoot my shot, so I did. It's like,
I mean, the thing is, it's not necessarily a bad strategy for winning the show. It's just a risky strategy, and it's going to make your life worse while you're there, because like we see all the time. I mean, Devin did this and he wound up getting the girl until he didn't. But
yeah.
I mean, like the Nick Viall strategy was the same. He got a lot of like one-on-one time. I think there are smarter ways to do it where you don't alienate yourself in the house, but the lead traditionally looks fondly upon those who are willing to sacrifice their likability with the other contestants to get that quality time.
And the lead, however, on the flip side, usually likes somebody that is also well liked in the house.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't. The thing was with Devin, which was weird, was he just got pushed to like level 2 of villainy because of Sam. Like that time that he took Jen away during a group date, everyone was mad at him, but people seem to forget about that. And yeah, as the lead, you want the woman that you're interested in or the woman that you pick to be someone that the girls speak highly of. If everybody's running to Grant saying, God, Zoey's one way around you and different around us, it's just like, that's never going to work on this show. It's not going to work. It's just never going to help your status on this show.
Yeah, you have to figure out. So like my game plan when I was on was to stay out of the drama. And I was going to pull a Nick Viall, and I asked to do this and they said no, but I was basically going to try to like get some quality time with Arie like after hours and be like, hey, could I like come grab him from his room and take him to a bar so that we can have, because Nick did that on Andy's season or maybe Caitlin's.
Might have been both. I can't remember.
Might have been both. But he in Europe did the very smart thing where he basically created his own date. Like he took one of them to like a little wine bar and they had a glass of wine together. I was like, that is such a good idea. It's sneaky. It's not, getting in the way of other women's time. It's actually curated. You're not just like stealing them for 10 minutes to come up with something to talk about. You're actually taking them out, you're bending the rules like, ooh, wow, romantic and mysterious. So I tried to do that and I said no, but
nice try.
Yeah.
A for effort. And I don't think the girl that you guys had to deal with most on your season that was doing things and was Crystal. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if Crystal was a can I steal him for a sec girl. I can't remember if she was that.
I don't think she was.
No.
I don't think so.
It was more about she just wouldn't talk to any of you about her relationship with Arie. She would never talk about her dates.
That was the first thing, and then I don't remember. She got into it with Tia and Caroline for something, but I don't remember what it was. Then she just started unraveling. She got really mad at Arie for letting the other team come to the after party.
Yeah, pencil dick.
Needle dick, yeah. But that was in an ITM.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought she said that in the van on the way back.
No, in the van she said # not Peter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Crystal, an icon. You don't get people doing that anymore, talking about who should have been a lead. But so when we move on in Monday's episode, what was interesting, and I pointed this out because I knew what was coming in episode 3 in Monday's episode. I knew the first one-on-one, or I knew that Carolina's one-on-one date was a private jet to Vegas. And I found it interesting because for the first time ever, they did that whole thing on night 1 where they said, hey, you get the first impression rose. Not only are you safe at the first rose ceremony, but you get the first one-on-one of the season.
Yeah.
And then Alex got a trip to the mall, which was so fucking boring. There was nothing to it. It was about as generic of a one-on-one date. It was the first one-on-one of the season. And I knew that Carolina's one-on-one was going to be a all-day trip to Vegas. It's almost like, man, if you're Alex,
yeah, that blows.
You must feel like, wait a second. Man, I got the short end of the stick on this one.
Yeah. That happens. Back at Griffrin's date, she got a shopping spree and free like $6,000 Louboutins.
But didn't she get a bunch of clothes out of it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She got an awesome date.
She got an awesome date. Oh,
other people have to go like bungee jumping. I mean, that would suck.
Well, yeah, and I just think, I mean, even going to Vegas for Carolina, I mean, you know my affinity for Vegas. I wouldn't be caught dead at the Strat. Like I've been to Vegas over 50 times. I've never stepped foot in the Strat before, and I have no interest in going to the Strat either. It's kind of a dumpy hotel. Nobody goes there.
I stayed there once.
Did you? It's not
Yeah.
a destination hotel.
It's not. No, it's not.
Yeah, and that jump that they did. Maybe you know this. Is that considered bungee jumping? Like when you jump feet first and you're just jumping straight down and you've got a giant harness on your back. I feel that, look, I wouldn't do either because I'm not an adventure person like that. But I feel like what we see next week when they're in Madrid, him and Serafina get a one-on-one and they literally jump off a bridge and dive head first and they're hanging by their feet. Like that to me is bungee jumping. Yeah. So what was that?
I've done okay, off the Strat, did they just gently land? They were in a harness and then they were attached to like a rope? Did that start?
Yeah, you jump and you kind of free fall at probably a good pace.
Yeah.
But then you're slowly low. You don't just free fall and hit the ground hard because you'd break your legs.
Yeah. I know I've done that before.
Oh, you have?
I hated it.
What is it? Is it just called like a drop? What is it?
It was called like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They had some like park specific name for it. It wasn't like I don't know. I don't know what the technical term is.
I think the Strats is like 300 feet. Do you know how high yours was?
Maybe would 100 feet give me enough time to free fall for a little bit? I feel like it was like between 100 and 200 feet. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't like
Was it scary whatsoever? Like, were you?
Yeah, it was horrifying.
Oh,
it's one of these experiences where, and I tell patients this all the time. I'm like, when you're thinking about like jumping off a cliff into the water and you're standing up there and you're freaking out. And then you jump off. And the worst, scariest part of the entire experience was the freak out you were having before you actually did the thing.
Yeah.
That's what like an exposure is going to be like. Except that in this case, I don't actually know that was true. Jumping off was pretty horrifying too. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. I felt good afterwards.
Was it a pretty fast fall? Like during your fall before it kind of braced you and lowered you down? Were you going pretty fast?
Yeah, I mean, it was free falling, I think.
Okay.
It certainly felt like it.
Where were you?
I didn't go down gracefully. I was at an adventure park in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. So you were in North Carolina. This wasn't country or anything.
No, but I was like violently like moving the whole way down. It wasn't graceful or cute.
Were you supposed to be doing that?
No, it's funny because my parents got like videos of my sister doing it and then me doing it, and she just sort of glides down, and then I'm like, like doing contortionists.
How old were you during this?
I was like last year.
Oh, this was last year. I thought you were going to tell me this was like back in high school or something. Okay.
No, but I am officially done with jumping off of things. I'll do skydiving once, but
yeah, I have no interest in that either. I've never done anything of the such. I've never done a bungee jump. I have no interest in doing a bungee jump.
Yeah, my dad was a competitive skydiver when he was young, so I feel like I have to do it once. Yeah. Yeah, he did all sorts of tricks, but that apparently doesn't feel like free falling because the air is pushing you up, so you feel kind of pillowed for a while, and then you're in a parachute.
All right, so at dinner we find out something about Carolina that I didn't know about. Only most of America knew about, other than her family and friends. That she suffers from epilepsy, and it's seemingly something where she gets seizures. I don't know how familiar you are with epileptic seizures, but she's telling the story and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I've never been with anybody who's had epileptic seizures, but she really made it seem like, guys basically ditch me when they find out that I have this, and on occasion I can have a seizure at any moment. I felt bad for her because I was like, geez, what a dick to do that. Like, they're dating her, everything's fine, she has a seizure, and then all of a sudden he's kind of done a 180 on her. Sad story.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that. I also think this adds to the show's, I don't want to call it trauma bonding, because he didn't have anything to give to her in terms of his trauma, but he was moved by it. He was moved to tears by it. And, or was that Latia? I can't remember which one he cried on the date. But we all know one-on-one dates on this show, they love to put someone on a one-on-one date who's got a story like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel for her, but can we just get somebody who goes on a one-on-one date and says, I've loved my life after that. I haven't gone through anything, you know?
Yeah,
okay?
I don't think so. Yeah, so it is irritating that seemingly everybody who is a contestant on the show has it's not that it's irritating that they have a traumatic past. It's irritating that they're seemingly casted for that traumatic past. And I don't know to what extent that's true. I didn't have a traumatic past. That's not why I was cast. So I don't know. But I think what the problem is, so for this, I didn't have the feeling like, this isn't really a first date conversation. There are some, like when they, talk about sexual assault, that where I'm like, the only reason you are telling the story right now is because you've been pressured to by production. Epilepsy seems very relevant, especially if she's been left for it. And so I can understand more why she's basically like, look, if you're going to date me, you have to understand this about me. What I dislike about every single one of these conversations is that the edit does not include, or maybe the conversation didn't include, any real processing of what that means. So Grant coming in and saying like, oh my God, it's so horrible that men have left you for this. I would never do that. You're so much stronger, yada, yada, yada. Skips the whole part where it's like, okay, well, what does epilepsy really mean? Like, what does this look like in a relationship? What do I have to know to properly take care of you? Like, I want to know why this is freaking all these guys out, because I hear this and I'm like, damn, like you're a dick, but what are they experiencing? How limited is her life? Maybe it's not at all. And they are just, like lacking compassion. But I'm sure I've never seen somebody have a seizure. I'm sure that's terrifying. And it's horrific that she's left because of it, but we don't really know like what exactly is going on. And she's telling him like, this is something you need to know. This is something that would affect you as well. And there's never, I feel like when this happens, the lead never asks, okay, what do you mean by that? How will it affect me? Let me talk to you and, so we can actually think about this together. And so I'm not just like, mollifying you and saying, no, of course it's not going to be a problem, because it very well might as soon as they leave the show.
Yeah. And you brought it up in the beginning of your answer. He very well could have asked something like that, but for time constraints and production not wanting to dive too deep into it, they just leave it fairly surface level in terms of what we see as viewers. So it's very well possible he could have, but we don't know. So, but yeah, I agree that there should be a little more in depth, especially something as serious as epilepsy. This isn't like, hey, every once in a while I get panic attacks. Not saying that panic attacks aren't important, but having seizures, I don't want to say a drop of a hat. Maybe it's something that she has to be triggered to cause a seizure, or maybe seizures could just come about. I have no idea. Yeah. But it does seem like we could have used a little more of how do you get through this?
Yeah. I noticed this a lot with, like, for instance, when Gabby Windey was on the show and she was talking about the way that her mother's abandonment of her has affected her and her relationships. And it's all well and good for all these guys to say, oh my gosh, but you're so lovable and deserving, and that would never be a problem. But she's saying it's a problem, and it is a problem. If your mother abandons you, if you have that deep of an attachment wound, it's going to show up in your relationships, and that other person needs to know how, so that they can be prepared, right? And so that they can know, like, what is happening in this moment when your abandonment wound is flaring up. And because like this does wreck relationships. It does wreck relationships if you can't wrap your head around the fact that somebody else really loves you, if you're always waiting to be left, if you're always afraid to communicate in particular ways because you could be left. And so I would like to see that be more of a conversation.
Yeah. And Maybe it got left on the editing room floor. We just don't know. It did
Yeah.
seem like there could have been a lot more that was dove into in that, but we didn't get it. So we find out that Beverly, who was supposed to have the second one-on-one, had to medically be removed from the show. She was on a podcast earlier today. She said that she had appendicitis. She, on the day of the group date, 2 days before her one-on-one was supposed to take place, she said she got sick, wasn't feeling well. She thought it was food poisoning. She was literally throwing up for hours and hours. I think she said 12 hours on and off. And then had to be taken to the ER. And at the ER, the doctor told her, you have appendicitis. So that's why she had to be removed from the show. She doesn't get a one-on-one, taken off the show. And 3 women get a second date. 3 women that were on the finance date got to get a second date. It was Dina, it was Serafina, and Latia. And Latia got extra time, and we find out on her one-on-one date, again, obviously, horrible story, losing a parent when you're 3 months old, so obviously she has no recollection of her father outside of pictures. But she said she was raised white mother, her father was from Fiji. He died when she was 3 months old. She's basically been raised by her mother and a lot of her family. They FaceTime the mother, which obviously cool thing to do. Probably why they had her tell that story, because they wanted to make the phone call to the mother on the date since she's so close to her. But did you have an issue with that? I don't think I had an issue with her bringing up the fact that she lost her dad at 3 months on her first date.
It was extremely relevant. I also didn't think it was a trauma bond episode. It was mostly a happy story of like, wow, I have such incredible family, and this is why I value them so much and why it's so hard. There's a ton that's interesting to be explored. What's it like to be a different race from the rest of your family, and never having any contact with your father, who is the only representative of that race, right? So that, that got scrapped, but maybe that's a conversation for a different day. I don't know.
And it was relevant because Grant was able to then have a conversation about his dad, who we know struggled with
addiction. Yeah.
Do we know? Has he ever said what addiction his dad has?
I'm not sure.
Drinking or drugs, I think, is what it. He might have actually said it on Jen season and has just used the word addiction on this season. Because I feel like he had a one-on-one with Jen and told her about his dad. And I can't. Yeah, I'm blanking, but I think it might be alcohol.
Well, I feel for him because my sister's an addict, and it's no picnic, and seemingly lasts forever.
Yeah, and so it became relevant. It got Grant to talk about it. I can't remember. Was he, like I said, I brought this up earlier on Carolina's date. Was he crying with Carolina or was he crying with Latia? Or both?
I feel like it was Latia, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was Latia now that I think about it. I don't think he was crying because Carolina had epilepsy. I think he was crying more for the fact that Latia lost her father at 3 months and he had his father story. All right. So they did something that they did usually sometimes they'll forego the cocktail party before a rose ceremony for a pool party. This time they decided to have prom. And I don't know if you know this, you probably don't. And I didn't even realize it until last night once Grant brings in like, hey, gonna bring in my buddies from Golden Bachelor. What's funny about that is none of Grant's women have a fucking clue at the time of filming who these guys are because Joan's first episode started airing on September 18th last year. September 18th was the first night of filming for Grant's season. So these women have never even seen these men before. They have no idea how long they ever lasted. They know they're contestants on the Golden Bachelor. And unless they read spoilers, they don't have any clue anything about these guys' background and their story. And they've never seen them on TV. But the funny thing is the same thing happened with Jen last season. On one of Jen's group dates, they brought in some of Gary's women. And those women, those men on Jen's season would have never have seen because the show hadn't aired yet by the time they left for filming. So I just love how the show does this.
I don't know why I have such an irritated reaction whenever they cross-pollinate with these shows, whenever they like bring stars from previous episodes. Something about it bugs me and I cannot figure it out. I was like, why?
I was just going to ask, well, what about it bugs you? The fact that these men are supposed, or these women last night were supposed to act like they knew who these guys were? Or
well, that's stupid. Yeah. I don't know. There's something cheesy about it. Maybe like it just feels.
I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't really add anything.
It doesn't add anything ever.
No.
So it's just kind of like, okay, like we're still like. They're still making these people into stars, even though there's not really anything that there's being added. It's just kind of like, okay, well, we know that you like these people, so but that's like a legit thing to do. I don't know. There's something irritating about it, but I don't
even remember. If I'm not mistaken, I don't remember any of the guys even pulling any of the women aside and like maybe even giving advice or helping with their journey. It just seemed like they were just dancing.
Well, and I just kept thinking how odd it would be to be at a prom with 4 random old men, and then the only other man there is the Bachelor, right? So it's like, okay, so there's 5 men here. Only one of them is our age. These 4 dudes are just dancing by themselves, I guess, and then the rest of us are women.
The show loves. Look, we know this is what the show does. They love promoting and bringing on either past leads, past successful couples, but at least there's intention behind that, because a past former couple that goes down to paradise can pull a couple aside and say, hey, this is what we went through. This is what to expect. That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 guys from Joan's season I enjoyed Joan's season. I think the Golden Bachelor and the Golden Bachelorette is so much more heartfelt than the regular franchise,
right?
Because these people are more serious. They're not looking for, careers out of this. So I have nothing against those men. I'm just saying, let's be honest, it didn't really add anything to the episode other than, hey, we liked seeing those guys on Joan's season. It's cool seeing them again. For some people.
Yeah.
Not you, Jacqueline.
I'm trying to figure out if I'm like jealous because I wasn't brought on, but there's just something I don't know. It's like promoting people, but never mind. I don't know.
I get what you're saying. It's promoting people that didn't have a point to be there because they did not interact with the women. They did not interact with the women and add any value to why they were there. It makes sense to bring a former successful Bachelor in Paradise couple down to the beach to speak to the group. That makes total sense to me. Yeah. This doesn't, because they didn't add anything. Right. I don't remember them ever having a conversation with anyone.
Right. There's no relevance other than like, look, remember you guys like them. Like, let's make them even more famous. But it probably won't even add fault. Like, I don't know. It won't translate into anything. So now we're just like, all right, well, this is a digression. Like, hey, guys. But maybe I'm just jealous. I don't know.
I don't think you're jealous. There's really nothing to be jealous about.
I just always wanted. I always look for the like, okay, if I'm having a reaction to something, then this probably speaks to something bad within me, and I always want to name that before someone else does.
Yeah. All right. So the biggest drama that happened at the party was what happened between Rose and Carolina, and this has really taken on a life of its own because everybody is trying to dissect this. And I said it last week. I had the quote last week, but we'll go over the quote again. So Carolina, who had a one-on-one date, and she's the woman this season that is having a hard time that the lead dates other people.
Yeah.
We've seen that character trope in this show all the time. There's always somebody that just has a hard time, especially coming off a very cool private jet to Vegas one-on-one date, and then the next day he's going out with somebody else. I get it. You're probably not made for the show if that bothers you, but that's another story for another day. But Carolina says in an off-camera conversation that she had with Rose, Rose told her that during last week's R&B group date, Grant told Rose when he was up there with Carolina, keywords there, with Carolina.
Oh, he did say that?
That's what Rose told to Carolina.
Got it.
That, hey, Grant told me when he was up there dancing with you, he told me he was thinking of me.
Right.
So people have gone back to last week's episode, and I have the quote here. at the cocktail party, I can't remember if it was probably the group date after party of the R&B group date. Rose is talking to Grant, and Grant says to her, I'm not going to sit here and lie. You're somebody that I do think about. I just want to make sure that you know that because I'm very interested in you. Like even today, right? The whole dancing thing on stage and everything, I was thinking about you. I don't want you to feel like I'm not paying attention because I am. So he said he was thinking about her, but he didn't specify when I was up there with Carolina, who quote unquote won the R&B group date. I was thinking about you, but that's what she runs and tells. So my thing is, Rose, even if you thought that's what he said, which is what she told Grant when he called her out on it. Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry. I thought that's what you said to me. Why would you go and tell Carolina that? It's only going to piss her off more. You know, even if you thought Grant told you, hey, when I was up there dancing with Carolina, I was actually thinking about you.
Yeah.
Going to tell Carolina that, what did she think she was going to accomplish by that, other than literally making Carolina spiral even more?
I mean, from her description, it almost sounded like they were having some girl talk and like maybe they were trying to figure out what kind of guy Grant is and like trading notes. That's the only way this makes sense to me. Yeah.
If you were Carolina in that situation, would you be? So two things. If you're Carolina, are you mad that Rose told you that? And if you're Rose, are you mad that Carolina then went to Grant and said, this is what Rose told me?
Okay. Okay. If the situation was they were having girl talk, they were trading notes about like, who is this guy? Do we trust him? Is he good? You know, whatever.
You think he's a player?
Yeah. Then I would be upset with Carolina for saying that. I mean, I think I would understand why she did, but I would also maybe want her to come to me first and be like, hey, I want to bring this up to him because, I mean, Rose is clearly getting thrown under the bus here, and that's going to cause a huge issue for her. I could just imagine being Rose and being like, we were having a trusted moment. Because when you're on the show, you're in this weird position where like everyone's supposed to fawn over and worship the lead, but no one's that stupid either. So with Arie, like, we all knew that not everybody had equal feelings for him. We weren't all just like, wow, Arie's amazing. There has to be some level of trust with each other where you can say, like, I don't know about this guy. What do you think? Like, what kind of person do we think he is? Especially when you're a woman and you've dated men before. I mean, there's a really high chance they'll be a shitbag. So, like, just because a group of producers has called them on doesn't mean they're not a shitbag. I mean, so it's like, of course you're going to talk about that. You have no one else to talk about it to. So there's a betrayal of trust in that sense. And if Rose really was kind of like, if that's what she thought he said, then that is kind of sketch. So I could see it being like, what the hell? Like, now we don't have this ability to trust each other when we have these conversations. And I guess it's everyone for themselves, but that is also kind of the structure of the show. So you don't know.
And then in the promos for next week, you're literally seeing Rose saying she did me dirty. Like, she's definitely mad at Carolina for telling Grant that. But it does seem like Rose, it was like a game of telephone that went completely sideways.
Yeah.
That's not what Grant told her. He told her, yes, while we were all dancing, but everybody was up there dancing at some point.
Right.
And for some reason, unless there is footage that wasn't shown of Grant specifically saying, when I was up there with Carolina, I was thinking of you. I cannot imagine Grant would be that stupid to be specific about, yeah, Carolina won the date, but Rose, you were the one on my mind. Like that. He wouldn't be that dumb. And the way he reacted when he heard that his actions seemed to back that up. Like, no, I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what I said she took wrong, which seemingly she did. But yeah, it's a tough one. You know, Rose basically now has to repair her whole relationship with Grant because he feels like she tried to get ahead or tried to one up Carolina by saying like, yeah, you might have won that R&B date, but he said he was thinking of me. Like, it almost seemed like a
the sad thing here is that this would be so easy to just move on from. like, okay, she misunderstood what you said. Clarify. All right. Well, given that she misunderstood what you said, can you see why maybe she, when she was having a heart to heart with Carolina, was concerned about that, told her that? Like, okay. And can you see why Carolina was upset by that? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. There's a misunderstanding. Let's move on. It doesn't have to be this like crucible situation.
But this is The
The
Bachelor.
Bachelor.
And there's no way they're going to let something like that just be like, hey, can we just drop this? Sure. Are we good? Yeah, we're good.
But it's not an interesting conflict, really. You know, there's no villain here. There's nobody misbehaving here. Like, okay, it's a misunderstanding. So now we have to watch, like,
Carry
okay,
over
yes,
into next week.
fallout. And
Yeah.
it's not like with that, oh, God, there was one season with such a good villain. She was such a legit, like, actually seemed like a sociopath. But I don't know if it was Peter's season or. No. It was, what?
Kelsey Poe.
No, well, yeah, she was crazy. But no, this is a more recent one. It was the guy who's not the pilot, but the one who with Rachel would watch the planes fly.
Rachel Recchia?
Yeah, he was on her season, and then he became Bachelor, and he's with some girl named Catherine, I think.
What am I blanking on here?
Yeah, because he was kind of a boring dude. I mean,
he became the Bachelor from Rachel's season?
He became the Bachelor from Rachel's season.
Everyone watching right now or listening right now is probably screaming, Steve, how do you not know this? And I'm just drawing a blank.
It's like his name is Jonathan, but I don't think it actually was. He just looks like a Jonathan. He's got dark hair. He's still with his girl. They lived in the same city.
Zach?
Yeah, Zach.
Oh, yeah, Zach. Yeah.
He doesn't look like a Zach, so that name doesn't match up. But
Zach and
he
Kate
had an amazing villain on his season. She was like so hateable, and she was unapologetic for it. And when she did apologize, it was completely fake.
God, now I'm trying to think of Zach's season. Who was the villain on Zach's season? Was it Kat?
I don't know.
Was it Kat Izzo?
No, it wasn't Kat. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But like Demi was also a good villain because she wasn't really a villain, right? It's like complexity and personality makes for a good villain, not a misunderstanding.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, number one, it does carry over into next week. It does have ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we have seen in the preview for the season that they give at the first episode, which kind of glosses over the whole season, is we see Carolina almost leaning into a villain role. I remember a scene where she's walking up the steps saying, everybody hates me, or something like that. And so it almost is like it turns into, I think Carolina just doesn't seem, this environment wasn't for her. We're already getting that impression that we already know that she's the girl this season that doesn't like the fact that the guy that she's into is dating other women. Yeah. She acknowledges this, hey, this is what I signed up for. But once, I guess it's like, you can all know you're signing up for it, but once you're in it, some people react differently, right?
So this is my issue with Grant sort of stirring the shit and wanting everyone to tattle on each other. I don't know how useful it is to know how the woman is behaving with the other women. I know they never like that and they always get sent home for that. But what invariably happens is that the villain will go on Paradise and have a redemption arc. So it usually seems a side effect of like you're in the wrong environment for your personality to show through, or like you're with the wrong people, or this, because it is a pressure cooker and it isn't for everyone. But unless there have been very few people where there's like legit a serious problem. Like Chad was a serious problem and nobody should have been with him back then. But like Crystal is happily married with a kid, you know, it really wasn't that necessary for Arie to know that she was like causing problems, other than to understand like there's some difficulty behind the scenes and women might be kind of riled up and emotional, but it doesn't, like, us tattling on Crystal didn't save Arie from a bad person.
But you're also in a competitive field in that environment. Well, obviously, you know, by getting her out, that's one less person that I have to quote unquote beat. There's probably some of that goes into your decision to tattle on her, right?
I understand the motivation from the contestant's end, but when the lead willingly engages in the drama and tries to play referee and like wants to know who the bad guy is in the house, I'm just kind of like, I don't know that that's really a good move. Like, you might really like the villain in a different like after the show's over, it might be totally fine.
Well, what's funny is when he asked Carolina, who was it? The first three names he threw out were all wrong. He didn't even know.
I was like, are
funny.
you throwing out names of the women you were thinking about while you were dancing with Carolina?
Yeah, exactly. He's just like, who? I can't remember. He's like, was it, was it Bailey? No. Was it Dina? No. Was it Latia? No. I'm just like, all right, maybe Grant, just quit while you're ahead now. Just like, okay, you clearly are way off on this. And yeah, that was kind of funny. But yeah, I think it's, we talk about it all the time, every time you're on, about the environment of this show. It's just, this isn't normal dating. This isn't normal how you would go about courting somebody in the dating world, whether you're in your own city in New York or LA or Chicago. This isn't how you date. This is such a heightened environment. Emotions are running high. It's just, but it's television. This is what we have to expect from the show, because if everybody on the show, everybody got along and everybody sang Kumbaya at the end of the night and there was no issues, whether it's brought on by producers or not, it would be the most boring fucking show on television. It's why people watch The Housewives. You think they watch The Housewives because they want to see 5 or 6 New York or New Jersey women all get along and go to brunch together? No,
I understand why it's necessary. And I understand why the producers are doing this. I'm just wondering, if I were the lead, what would I do? If somebody came to me and was like, that guy Josh was mean to me. It's like, okay, well, how important is that? Is this something you two can work out between the two of yourselves, please? Like, how is this really relevant to me? Like, is Josh an evil person? Now, on Jen's season, there were serious concerns.
Yeah, there were some real D-bags on her season.
Yeah, but I don't know. The Bachelors, they seem to get like decent women, and how they get along with each other, like, I would think it would be important. Like, I would want to know, if I'm dating somebody, can they play nice with others? But it seems less relevant on this show, because as soon as they're in a different context, they tend to behave okay. Like, as soon as they're on Paradise, they're fine. So yeah, I don't know.
So something I wanted to end with was a video clip that I saw of you.
Oh dear.
And it's from your podcast, A Little Help for Our Friends. And I kind of I'm going to segue it from this show, because we were talking about Carolina. We were talking about the fact that she cannot possibly handle the fact that a guy that she went on a great date with is now having connection or just picking somebody else up for another date literally the next day. So clearly this environment probably doesn't suit her well, which brings me to my point that I wanted to make with you in a recent show that you did. You know what I'm getting at, right?
Ethical non-monogamy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly she wouldn't clearly she wouldn't be cool with that. And I want to point this out, because you guys, you and Kibby did an episode on A Little Help for Our Friends on ethical non-monogamy, which is something that has never crossed my mind ever. But I found the clip that you posted really, really interesting, because it at least made me think. And I think that's what you guys do on your podcast, is you get to present situations that maybe people don't think about. And I'm guessing most of the people that watch The Bachelor don't think about or aren't involved in ethical ethical non-monogamy, which is, you know what, I'm going to butcher it. So why don't you explain what you guys talked about and what you said? The one thing that I took from it was you said specifically, hey, sexual exclusivity doesn't necessarily mean it's the definition of commitment. And I will say this, I'm not going to name names because there's no need to, it's irrelevant, but there are people in this Bachelor franchise that are in open relationships or ethical non-monomical. Why can't I fucking pronounce that? I keep saying non-monomical.
You can just say E&M. E&M relationships.
Yeah. E&M relationships. We know that there are people that are in this franchise. For me, I've never really put any thought into it, but then when I listened to it, I was like, could I do this?
Yeah.
If I had a partner that was obviously also, she has to obviously also be into it and agree to it. It's not going to be like, hey, this is what I'm into. If you're not into it, we're done. I don't think I could get there, but explain to people what you guys talked about on that episode.
Sure. Well, ethical non-monogamy is an umbrella term for a lot of different kinds of relationships, but where the sexual exclusivity is not the basis of commitment. So you might be in an open relationship where you can have sex with other people. You might be polyamorous where you have like multiple full-on relationships that are committed. You might be swingers where, you know, you and your partner are like basically trade partners with another couple or several other couples. It's a little bit of a choose your own adventure, right? Like you can be E&M however you want, but the thing that defines it is that it is consensual. That's the ethical part. It's consensual. It's communicated. I am not in an E&M relationship. It's possible that people heard that clip and thought I was, but what we were talking about, the thing that I admire about E&M relationships is that I admire a lot of things, but one of the things is that they don't assume that sexual exclusivity is the basis of commitment. And the reason I admire that, I don't think it's a problem to have sexual exclusivity. That's what I have in my relationship. But I think that incorrectly places the emphasis on sex in your relationship when actually commitment is something much deeper and more kind of almost thorough than sex. So when I think of my relationship, what makes it committed is that he and I are building a future together. We are kind of, to the extent that we can, guaranteeing a place for each other in our future. We are compromising with each other constantly. We are putting each other's needs first. You know, we are each other's support systems. We're the first person we call if we need to. And all of that stuff to me is deeper and more
It's
layered.
more important than the sexual
more
part of the
important than
relationship.
sex. Right. So it's a little bit odd that sex is for some reason, like I've heard a lot of people say, well, if you're gonna like sleep with other people, then like, why don't we just like, then we're just friends. Like we're nothing more than friends. And I'm like, well, that's not true at all. You know, like I can sleep with another person, but still have romantic feelings for you, still, you know, dedicate my future to you. And I think E&M really gets that right. They're like, what are the most important actual like elements of our relationship that we want to build our commitment around? And sex is a part of our relationship, but it's not everything. And we're really acknowledging that when we do E&M and remain committed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was an interesting topic because, like I said, I thought about it and I'm just like, I don't think I could do it. I would be too jealous. Even if I was allowed to do it myself, you know, even if we said, hey, both of us, we're still coming home to each other at the end of every night. You know, you're staying here, you're living here, or I'm living with you, whatever the case. We're living together, but I'll let you go out and do your thing sexually. I can do my thing sexually, but I know that we're building something deeper than just sex. It would just, and I'd say I'm in the majority, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people think this way, but it's not far-fetched. And when you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, sex is a physical act. It's great and all, but we all know, I mean, I shouldn't say we all know. I have enough friends who have been married. You know, I hear stories about marriage, and the longer marriage goes on, it's more about your connection with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Not, you know, we all know, I think, your sex life, when you first meet somebody and you first start dating, and maybe even the first few years of marriage, maybe even into year 5 of marriage. But we know the sex life is not the same in year 1 and year 5 than it is in year 20 and 25. So clearly, you might want to be with somebody that it's more than sex and you have a much deeper connection with. I think that would be the biggest answer to why sex should never be the focal point of a relationship.
I think a lot of women get into this place with sex also where it feels incredibly obligatory, and it brings up a lot of kind of implicit trauma from dating earlier, or even from lessons that we did, you know, that we hear as we're growing up, that we're mostly wanted for our bodies. And you see a lot of women kind of turning away from sex or pushing sex away, especially after like the dopamine hit of a new fantastic romantic relationship dies out, where it's like, oh, this feels obligatory. This feels like something I have to do. And I don't want to. I'm doing obligatory things all day long, and I feel like I have to just perform, and I have to give this thing no matter what, because men will leave me if I don't. And that's been a lesson I've been taught over and over again. And there's something, in a way, deeply romantic about saying, you don't actually. And like, your partner can support you in having sexual experiences with other people, and you can support them in that as well. But really what brings you two together isn't what your body can give to him or provide to him, right? It's the fact that you want each other's futures to be together. And so changing the focus, I think a lot of people think that E&M puts more of a focus on sex, and in a way I think it puts less of a focus on sex. So I agree, like I don't have any interest in it at this point. I think I have low enough jealousy to where in another world I could do it, but it's just not. I'm still thrilled to sleep with my boyfriend and, have him be my like romantic connection. But you're right. Like, I don't know how I'm going to feel in 5 to 10 years. And it could be pretty awesome to be like, hey, like our sex life has changed. And what if we didn't just condemn ourselves to this forever?
Yeah, it's really a fascinating topic and something I had never even thought of in my life. I mean, I've obviously heard about open relationships, whether it was within this franchise or outside of this franchise. You just hear it all the time. There's shows about it on television, polyamorous relationships, and that Mormon show out there, the guy that lives with 4 wives or whatever. I know there's a reality show about that. Maybe that's completely different than what we're talking about here, but it's just something that when I saw the clip, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to bring this up to Jacqueline when she's on. And that's your most recent episode, right? On A Little Help for Our Friends? Or did you have...
Well, when this episode is released, it will be our second most recent episode. We've got an episode coming out tomorrow, but yeah. And I do think our E&M episode was really strong. It was something that I've been interested in for a very long time. I flirted with E&M and, been in those circles. So I have a lot of thoughts about it.
What was the reaction to it?
Positive for the most part. Yeah.
Did any negative reaction that you got to it? What was their stance? What were they saying? Like,
so on TikTok, so Kibby posted on TikTok. I don't use TikTok. I have a moral objection to it, but they were chattier on TikTok, and they were basically, I said something about needs, like all of your needs and can't be met by one person, which we basically know is true. That's why we have friends. But they were basically making the point like, no, it's wants. And if you need to get them met by other people, then you're being selfish. I was like, I can kind of see your point. Like, you don't necessarily need to have sex with other people. But some people, I don't know. It can feel pretty damn close to a need. Like, I don't know what it's like to have a kink. Okay, but other people do, and it's really hard if you can't get that met within your relationship, and that's a common reason. There are many, many reasons, but a common reason to seek an E&M relationship is so that your partner doesn't have the full burden of accepting this part of you and doing things that they might not be comfortable with sexually, but in every other way or in most other ways, you're compatible. So people were objecting to that being called a need, and then somebody commented and then deleted it, and they were like, all E&M men are monsters. Like, oh boy, you've had experiences.
And I think the thing people have to understand is when you talk about E&M, this isn't one person doing it and the other person objecting, the other person having to just be submissive about it and being like,
right,
okay, this is 2 people consensually both agreeing this is what we want to do with our relationship, And it's a really interesting topic. You can check it out. A Little Help for Our Friends. Jacqueline is your podcast again. Anybody want to check that out, go download that on where you get your podcast. You guys are now on video as well. So
we're on YouTube.
So Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Good talk about Grant's season. Shit, we're 2 episodes away from hometowns already. How about that? 10 women left. They go from 10 to 7 next week in Madrid, and then 7 to 4 in Scotland. Wait, you guys didn't go to Scotland, did you?
No, we went to Paris and Italy, and then they went to Peru.
Paris, Italy, and Peru. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, Jacqueline, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And obviously, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Bye.